Welcome to Altar of the Demo Gods. If you're wondering what advice from two experienced sales engineers sounds like, it's a little like this.
Welcome to Altar the Demo Gods. I'm Keith Wilson, joined by my friend and co-host John Morton. John, how you doing tonight?
Ahoy hoy!
Ahoy hoy! You're
Gotta keep it
probably
alive.
you're one of the most racially ambiguous people that I know. So that's one of them coming out there.
I thought that was Alexander Graham Bell's answering the phone, but nonetheless.
For the third week in a row, we have a good friend of the show and guest, Charles Herring, who's the CTO of Whitfood. Charles, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, guys. Sorry, I'm wearing the same clothes again. I goofed up the wardrobe.
It's funny how all of us are wearing the same clothes, sitting in relatively the same position, haven't really changed much between episodes. Very curious.
Function over form. Function over form.
So in the last episode, episode 7, we were talking about coaches, champions, and economic buyers, determining the differences between those three and how to leverage each of those roles and work with each of those roles during the sales process, during a sales engagement. Before that, we talked a lot about the sales process and how that process works. Well, there's a pipeline that fills that process, which is what we're going to talk about today. We want to talk about developing and managing a sales pipeline, and it has a lot to do with what we already hit on. That's getting leads in and then qualifying, disqualifying those leads, working with, it's kind of a combination. I think this episode will be a combination of our last two episodes. So let's start with lead generation, right? When we're looking at lead generation, there's a ton of different ways to do this. So it's metric a ton of different ways. Just pure lead generation with no qualification. You need a healthy number there to start the process. I literally think of this as a sales pipeline or a literal pipe or a funnel, right? In terms of plumbing, water's flowing through, and you want as much water coming out at the end to fill up that bucket, being that money bucket, right?
Yeah.
With you want to fill that bucket up as fast as you can. So you want to get past the objections, the sales pipeline. You want to continue to move, and you want to make sure that you have fresh, continuous prospects or customers that you can sell to as well. So the lead generation part of it.
I think, to your point, Keith. So why even have this funnel? And I talk about this report all the time. It literally looks like a funnel. And anybody who's been in sales will know there's this concept of top of funnel. I think level setting it, bringing it 1,000-foot view, why does that matter? I always think, why do you care about the sales funnel? Number one is forecasting. If there are people who are invested in your organization, whether it's VCs, whether it's a board, whether it's a executive community, whatever it is, they want to know, how are you going to get us to your key objective of a specific revenue? And that revenue may be $1 million, $5 million, $10 million. The net of it is the top of that funnel is an indicator of how you're going to get to that metric. So if it's 1 million, right, you want to say, there are different stages of the sales process, that articulate, down. So it's the reverse of that, moving from top of funnel, 100 million in top of funnel down to 1 million. That's kind of the most basic scenario I can think of, right? So
So when we go from lead generation to qualification, we're making that first jump.
Right.
Charles,
correct.
How do you feel about top of funnel activity, lead generation activity?
Trying so hard to behave. So I think it's important to look at the funnel as a system. That any deal, when you're closing a deal, should be generating leads, right? And I think thinking about it in a non-linear way, it's easy to think about we need to get more at the beginning of the pipe, so we're going to do efforts that generate net new leads. But really, everything we're doing through that cycle is connected in the same way that any other system is interconnected, right? I'm breathing out, some plant's going to breathe it in and make some corn, and I'm going to use that corn. Someone will use the corn for grits, not to ton of grits are being consumed in Chicago. But anyway, the point of it is the best way to generate leads, like there's different quality of leads, which we talked about in episode 6. Part of that is where they came from, the expectation, and the best way, the best source of lead is through market awareness. And market awareness comes from the success of previous sales cycles and then leveraging existing customers to fuel in field marketing, right? Whether it's a user group meeting or some other event. So, obviously you can't get more coming out of the funnel than goes into it. So, I mean, that mechanic is pretty strong. But I would say, for folks that are going into the long haul at any organization, multi years, so it's going to be multiple funnels. The funnel resets to zero, at least not the funnel, but the end of the funnel resets to zero every period. Is how you increase the rate of things flowing into it. And so it's a systemic change. The way that perception, sort of the ineffable parts of what we do, are very important to the concrete things that we can see flowing through the funnel. So reputation, market adoption, buzz, and a lot of that is controlled by what we do in the field, right? The success of the deployment. So
yeah, I got to ask you a hard question. Hard question, Charles. And this is something I deal with all the time, right? So in sales, we always I wish it was transactional. All of us on here are buying yachts, Rolexes, on Instagram doing God only knows what because we made that much money on what we're selling. The net of it is, how much effort has to be spent into explaining what is a WITFU versus a world where we know what a WITFU is also aligns with kind of that top of funnel, right? So that's where it gets very confusing, is how much effort do we have to put into explaining what something is versus maybe taking something that's extremely transactional and then translating that into dollar revenue. That balance is difficult. So in your experience, right, having to explain some of these maybe newer ideas that aren't well understood, is it a specific ratio of top of funnel initiatives? Maybe let's say for every $1 we spend on someone who knows what WITFU is versus maybe 3x on someone who doesn't. Is there a dynamic you should look toward? Is there a balance, or is it complicated and requires a lot more math?
Well, yeah. So it depends on where you are in the organization making a decision. When I was, at SC at Landcope, I didn't get to control as many levers as I control now. And so I was out there picking the leads and throwing them into the funnel, right? I was going around wherever we could find them, and largely for us, it was through a partnership we had with Cisco, right? Selling to another person to help me find some leads to throw in, right? So it was referral. I think it's really important when we are talking about the funnel that we get precise on every stage, tracking from the beginning to the end. What was the characteristic of the lead? How did it come in? What campaign? We tend to say in Salesforce, was it an inbound campaign, a field marketing event, a referral from a partner? And so when we look at metrics on deal size, age, the deal age, how long did it take to close it? All of those things inform what do we do more of, right? What was the return on investment of the campaigns that led to lead generation? What were the characteristics of those campaigns? How do we do more of those campaigns? And so when I got to WITFU, I got to the point to where I wasn't going to compete with everybody having the biggest parties and the best cocaine. I wasn't going to fund that, right? I wasn't going to get the word out that way and sort of that boots on the ground. So I chose to use a clandestine channel approach where a lot of people buy WITFU. Most people that buy WITFU don't know they bought it. We're a component of a service that's, that we sell to distribution, that a service provider packages into, a managed security practice or an audit or packages in some way that they sell to a reseller. So I'm very far removed. I mean, when it comes by building that out, huge pain in the ass. 5 years to get that done, to sell to the sellers, to change their business and create that system that incentivize them to feed their own funnels that are precise. But in my case, I have a very broad type of application, which makes getting the word out hard. When
Yeah.
when we were at Landcope, we're a cybersecurity thing. They'll catch 0-day stuff through anomaly detection. So very tight messaging on what would sell, or we do network performance monitoring, which is another thing. But very tight message, right? Here's what we do. It's easy to explain. I understand what the species is.
I
And
just
you
thought
can
of
train
something,
on it.
Charles. I just thought of our acronym of the day, Keith. So
What's that?
what
Acronym
Charles
of the
is
week.
acronym of the week. What Charles is describing is distilling down this complexity, right? It's like casting a wide net. How do we find what matters? Top of funnel, blah, blah, blah. There's this terminology we use, and VCs love it. If you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to go pitch a product and you want to talk to VCs, venture capitalists, one term they're looking for is, do you understand your ICP, right? Your identified customer profile. To Charles's point, that person who has the pain, who will recognize the value of your product, the ICP is absolutely critical to kind of steering that. It's such a chaos, muck. If you can deliver an ICP to investors, VCs, PEs, folks like that, bro, they will absolutely just be overcome with joy that you understand that idea. So that's kind of what you're saying, Charles. Over time, 5 years, you got that.
And you have to figure out how do you acquire them, right? Because once you know what the persona is, who's going to buy, you have to understand how do they buy,
right?
And Keith participated in a trial. We held a trial for a go-to-market strategy that I called the self-selling model. I had this great dream that I could put up the stuff and the people was going to download it, launch it, and buy it. Boom.
Idea
did not work. Did not work. I lost at the trial. Didn't work. That was not how my buyers bought. And so when you start studying how they buy, they almost all enterprise buyers in my field buy from a vouch. There has to be someone that says you should check out the thing Charles is doing. It is what you need for this thing.
So,
and if that doesn't happen, then the person they get lost. It's too technical. There's too much surface area. They can't get to a place to where I can have a first conversation unless we're doing something very expensive,
applying what we're learning here. And I am a snail's pace reader, not the smartest guy on earth. But what you're saying is, for this to happen for you, if you had somebody come to market with you, an existing customer or someone who, associated with a potential buyer who delivered that message versus you, that helps with that top of funnel strategy and getting better qualified leads.
Yeah,
Very simple.
It's a different thing. Yeah, we mentioned, I think, in episode 6 about the quadrants, right? Gartner said, Forrester said, that's a type of market vouch that a lot of people lean on. Some other people lean on their reseller, or they might have a specific technology partner. Maybe they're a big IBM shop or a big Cisco shop or HP or whatever their thing is. There's somebody they trust in making strategic decisions and people they listen to. And so for me, it's about getting to that person and explaining to them when and why we matter.
You just gave me a beautiful idea. I'm sorry, Charles. I keep cutting you off, but I'm getting so excited. I always see I watched this show Alf from the 80s.
I've got every episode on my server. Yeah.
I absolutely love this thing. And Alf tried to sell makeup once, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude, makeup. But I always think about that company, Mary Kay, and their go-to-market, or any of these, and it's derogatory, but, pyramid schemes, that's their go-to-market. Let's sell to people we know. They're going to trust somebody who's selling this product, and they're technically going to give me a sample of it. I'm going to come to their house and buy Tupperware or makeup or whatever it is. It's an effective strategy over years. And that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Some of their tactics are wild, but that's kind of related, right? Am I crazy here?
Yeah, no, it's access, right? You need access to a customer. And the more complicated your technology is, the more inertia there is to get over it, right? If you're pitching my paper's cheaper and can show up faster, you don't need the level of trust to have the first conversation. And
Right.
we talked about this in episode 7, that building trust is so critical. It's more critical than anything to the champion level, and even more so to the executive buyer. They need to want to do business. And so there's a great inertia if you're saying, I need to teach you about how this quantum physics thing works. You're like, I don't know who you are. Why do you want to go through your crazy timeshare lecture when I don't even know that I need a
This flat
timeshare,
earther.
right?
I will
over
say
here.
there is a way to educate people as part of your marketing as well. I do it for a living, right? I think there's a I've pushed for it. I did it when I was at Witfu, and it's allowed me to do it at other companies too. And that's marketing through education, right?
Mhm.
And Charles and I, when we worked together, you'd mentioned user groups in another episode that we did. We hosted user groups, which was marketing based education. We were giving away free education, and because the people at user groups weren't even necessarily all customers. There were prospects that were there too, right? So we're giving away free security information that wasn't a sales pitch. It was just, hey, we're going to teach you some cool stuff with our technology. We're not going to pitch you on anything. And what I do now, the classes that I teach now, not all of them are vendor agnostic, but a good amount of them are, because I'm teaching the theories on which our product is based.
Yeah.
One of my strategies, and I tell this to companies too, is tell people how you do it. Like, don't tell them exactly how you do it,
Mhm.
but tell them how you would do it, whatever they do, if you were going to do it manually. So somebody can actually do it manually and see what a pain in the ass that is, and then go buy your product.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Right.
that is a common one. I think there's two parts in there that I want to bring out. One is the importance, and I think I've said this in every episode that I've been on in the last 3 weeks, that the offer is the main motion of the technical seller. That we have the ability to offer something, to provide something that's not just what's on the card. We can provide the education. We can provide community. You need to meet this guy over here. When I came from B-Sides, I made 3 different introductions to people because I knew that they needed to meet, because they were important to each other. It was an offer, right? I wasn't asking for anything. And I think that's a key part of all technical sellers, is bringing the offer. And to the other point on where education becomes really powerful, and you've done a great job of this at Attack IQ, is a community with education is a platform, right? Where you're bringing people together that are learning together, that are able to share their experiences, and that's a vouch, right? You need access.
I'll go beyond.
You need a vouch.
I'll go beyond vouching. The program that we have at Attack IQ has made people genuinely fans of Attack
Yeah.
IQ.
Mm-hmm.
They will take our marketing whatever excerpts and post them on their own social media. We don't ask them to do that, but they do it because they're fans of Attack IQ.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part. A sincere vouch is going to come unsolicited, right? All these examples I'm giving you, where I need to have someone so excited and trusting me, which means I need to create a forum that does that. That can't just be a sales cycle, right? It has to be something, a user group, or some ability, some capacity for people to talk to each other without me saying, hey, we're going to get on a conference call and you're going to tell this guy that you're a happy customer, and I really need this to go well, and I'll buy a steak. It can't be that. It needs to feel like a forum for collaboration. And I think when you do that, you solve trust.
Maybe that's a sticking point. So bringing the executive buyer into this, like me. If Keith came to me and he said, John, I need $20,000 to do this educational experience and to do this, it is extremely hard for me to forecast that into how that can potentially generate revenue. So that's just the rub, right? I know what you're saying has benefit. I don't disagree. But to driving my specific OKRs and getting me to where I need to be, I cannot forecast me educating a bunch of folks, on our product is going to translate to revenue. And that's hard.
My strategy takes about a minimum of a year to see any sort of traction on.
Well, I mean,
And
sales pipelines, yeah, that's how a pipeline is anyway. I mean, a sales guy
Well-
doesn't show up and close a deal after orientation.
100%.
You know,
there's
Yeah.
there's a
Bring
lot
it
of
back to reality, baby.
there's a lot of startups that expect it though. They expect within the first year that you're going to be closing deals.
Well,
Like
because
that.
every dollar spent is actually like really valuable, depending on the size of your company and where you're at, you gotta sell on the behalf. So, as an executive buyer, I gotta go sell to the VCs why I'm taking this strategy. And if it doesn't pan out, dude, I own that. I got egg on my face if nothing comes out of it. So it is
yeah,
interesting.
but I think it's more about time than dollars. I think that's the challenge. Is the problem I've always had with the sales pipeline as the major vehicle is it's checkers in a world that's playing 3D chess. Right?
Yeah.
It's so flat in the way that it's moving. In this episode we haven't really talked much through it, so we'll do it in episode 8.5. But how do you move things through the pipeline? But the problem with that is most of the stuff moving through the pipeline has nothing to do with the opportunity. It has to do with the qualities of the funnel, right? The funnel's clogged. There's a market congestion. There's a systems area problem. There's a vacuum going on, right? There's something happening, that you may be able to control, but probably not at the opportunity level, but at the systems level. So when you're talking about doing a training plan, you can look at it as a campaign that's fueling the funnel, which it is, right? There will be folks that are directly flagged that are entering the funnel from this thing, which is great because they've got a credly badge and experience and are able to advocate and be a better coach or champion. So that's why when I talk about flagging how things are coming in on lead gen, it's critically important to understand, what percentage of leads that came through the Attack IQ Academy closed versus those that came via partners or via inbound clicks or came via call campaigns. And so,
Oh yeah, and we for sure track all that stuff. Tracking and metricing is super important because my boss and the board want to make sure that the investment that they make in my program continues to pay off for them, right? And I need that for my own personal metrics. So at the end of the year, I can go, look at how much money I helped you guys make.
but I think time is the important part, John. To your point, like the VCs are less concerned about how the money's spent and when the line is at a point for the next round or the IPO or the exit, right? You have a timeline. We need to have some percentage quarter over quarter, year over year, month over month. And so you're chasing time. Yeah. And so this is why when we're making these pitches on systemic level things, or when you're coming in, I'm working with a partner, just, hired a great sales guy. And I was telling the executive, what he's selling is a 12 to 18 month sales cycle. So whatever happens before 12 or 18 months, that's just stuff. That's the meat moving through that pipeline. There's just nothing but air that's going to happen until, the flow or the siphon of, the water into
and
the
that's
bucket.
why I love having you on this show, Charles, because, in technical sales or sales generally, and it sounds cliche, but if you own this, it matters. If you can be the CEO of your territory,
Mm-hmm.
and you can articulate a message and communicate it like Charles just so eloquently did. Amazing. Of telling the VCs, mark that. Here's why it matters. Here's what I'm trying to do. Nobody has any problem. VCs, PEs, whoever, the board, investors, they don't have a problem spending money or investing in what you're doing. You need to communicate to me what you're trying to do. So being the CEO of your territory means exactly that, right? Whatever it is you're trying to do, this is exactly what we mean. To your point, I'm going to invest this time in creating education to this effect. All right, man, I'll take a gamble on that. You communicated it to me effectively. I'm going to take that risk, 100%.
Yeah. And I think there's a point where you can only operate. I can operate at a different level now, than I could, in the early days of being an SC. But you can't control, as you mentioned, John, what's going on in your territory. Instead of us doing another steak night, and in Chicago, there's a steak night every block, every place, every night of the week. So I'm competing over the same 20 guys that will show up on a Tuesday for another steak. But what if we did a user group? What if we did something that's just contributing, but we're going to track it? And I don't expect it to have a payout. And I think just getting into dimensions that we don't think about. Why training's important is, one, they get to learn your platform. Two, they have an opportunity to interact with you. You know, as we mentioned in the last episode, the importance of just having beers or having coffee or golfing or something. We're humans that are engaging with humans, and it's not that's not extra credit. That's foundational before we do anything else. Is we have to create a space where they have an opportunity to trust us and want to do business with us,
Yeah.
and so having these things where we're giving, they're not extra credit. And I think the problem we've had in software, and even more specifically, you know, in my area on cybersecurity, is there's been such a rapid expectation of growth, right? These hockey puck things, you know, these hockey stick things have got to show on growth, and then you don't have time to do these long-term things. And so people try to, when you've done all of the Rolodex selling and you've gone through all of the people and you've hired the second or third round of great sellers, you're down to, okay, let's build a channel now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the channel's not too happy with the fact that you just ignored them for the last, 5 years and 4 rounds.
Yeah.
And so, but it takes time, right? And
I think
now you're repairing that, and not just channel, but really any long-term thing, education academies, anything that's a long-term play. You just have to recognize you're not going to get a short-term return on a long-term play.
I'm gonna mark this. So I think the net of it, like, right, if I like to distill things down to their most basic message. Anybody who's in sales, even if it's technical sales as an SE, you're not just selling the customer. You're also selling your management on some of the initiatives you're trying to take. So that strategy, as long as it aligns to a funnel, top of funnel, bottom of funnel, mid funnel, whatever strategy, and you can articulate that message, dude, that's huge value add. So doing yourself a huge service of not just thinking about how do I sell my customers, but how do I sell my management ecosystem, whatever it is, on these initiatives I need to meet those objectives, is kind of that like most simplest goal. I don't know.
We had one situation where the VP of sales wanted me to require the sales reps at our technology partners to book at least 3 meetings. And I said, I'm not going to do that because they already know when to book the meetings. I can't blow up the system to fix up this quarter, right? I just spent a year and a half building this thing. You want me to blow it up for deals that can't, like, this is how the call's going to go. Hey, I got these crazy partners that are forcing me to make this call. I'll make it up to you later. Just, send one of your slackers in there to take this meeting, right? But the guy that look how big the
coach.
Yeah, look how big the front of the funnel got. None of that's going to close. I don't get comped on what's at the front of the funnel.
Yeah, I don't get comped on meetings. I get comped on deals that closed.
Yeah, so I think it is important to look at the whole system. But I think we spent more time talking about lead gen on the funnel part than we spent talking about lead gen on this thing on how to fix the funnel than when we defined lead gen in episode 6.
Good
luck with the editing, Keith.
Well, so here's my thoughts on I lied, right? We didn't hit the entire process. We spent the entire episode talking about lead generation qualification. But what I got from this conversation is the more focus you put on quality lead generation and qualification to make sure that those leads coming out are shiny and bright, one, not only are you going to be able to forecast better, but 2, it greases the wheels for the rest of this pipeline to happen, and for it to happen at a more efficient pace than it would otherwise. It's going to remove more roadblocks when you qualify these leads and educate these leads up front. Like I said, we're coming up to the end of the episode here, so I'm gonna each give you guys a couple minutes here for closing thoughts.
Yeah.
John, I'm gonna go to you. I'm gonna mix it up. I'm gonna go to you first this time. Then Charles will close out the episode. John, closing thoughts on lead generation.
Yeah, digging deep into this is that we are missing a primary component of it that, biasly, I feel like we, all 3 of us, have beat up on, is we need someone from marketing to come and defend themselves. We need someone to come and tell us why they feel like marketing qualified leads 1000x are more valuable than what we're saying in actually qualified leads. So that should be our goal, Keith. Find someone from marketing to come and address this. But holistically, metrics speaks for themselves. You have a large top of funnel. You distill that. That's more revenue, easy to defend. All I care about is forecasting and net of it. Charles eloquently put, if you can communicate what you want, it is very easy to get what you're asking for. This is a sales process overall. So not only selling to customers, but also selling to management.
Yeah. Charles, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I think just the big difference or divide for me on lead gen is there's system generated leads, and then there's synthetic generated leads, right? Where we're throwing business cards in the street or inviting random people to come see a movie, right? There's
Star Wars, baby.
Come see my Star Wars on Wood Food. But the quality of leads is one thing, but I think it's also there's an investment where we move out of the line and move into the circle. And there are investments we make that aren't immediate. They're going to be much longer in a payout. So, when you're engaging, if you only have one, cycle, one sales cycle, 1 year, 4 quarters, whatever they give you to prove you're worth keeping, you're going to feel inclined not to make a systemic investment in education and user groups and channel and things that are more than just throwing money at conferences and ad buys. And so, obviously, the earlier you decide to make those, the better. And one of the first things I did on lead gen was going back when I first started as a sales engineer, was go to all of our existing customers, learn how they were using it, learn what made them happy, what made them buy it, what are their current troubles, and make them happy. And so the post-sales part, we mentioned in the earlier episode, really is, I think, the most important part to lead gen, and it's a systemic contributor. Whereas I think, we get mad at marketing, but what's marketing supposed to do? They can't come in and do, a user group. They can't come in and tweak the system and derive more value. They can't come train people on this, on the system. So all they're left with are transactional, synthetic lead gen, which are exhausting. You got to go find another one. Systematic types of generation. Every deal has new baby opportunities. And so I think, where you can make investments in systemic lead gen, it'll be better for the company, better for your practice, at least until the territory splits. Then you'll make the next guy happy.
Charles, thanks for being on again. You've been a great guest. Appreciate having you on for the last 3 weeks.
Time to change my clothes.
John, as always, good talking to you. If you want to know more about Alter the Demo Gods, for all things Alter the Demo Gods, go to demogodspod.com. If you have questions for us, you can email us at demogodspod@gmail.com. I'm Keith Wilson, joined by John Morton, our guest, Charles Herring. Thanks again to you guys, and thanks for everyone for listening. Join us next week when we're going to talk about building rapport with prospective clients right here on Alter the Demo Gods.